I was stranded here once. That was my first thought when I landed in London. Stranded? Yes, I was once in London with no place to stay and no access to funds. When I studied abroad in Italy back in undergrad, I often took impromptu trips across Europe. I'd pick a country, book a flight, but rarely had an itinerary, and sometimes not even a hotel booked. Hold on. Everything always worked out until London. That afternoon, I landed. After wandering through a couple of museums, I pulled out my phone to lock in a hotel for the night. Got onto multiple websites, hit search, each one of them returned with no results found. Refreshed, hit search again, no results found. Huh? I decided to go grab something to eat. Let me give these sites a minute. Maybe they're glitching, I thought. I went to pay for my food and my card got declined. I'd forgotten to turn on my travel notifications and my cards got locked. Back to my phone, hit search again, no results found. I was stranded. The sun started to set and panic started to creep in. I had a friend who happened to be in the UK visiting family. I went back and forth between calling to ask if I can crash for a night or go back to the airport and sleep there. I seriously considered the airport. It felt like a better option than to impose on someone last minute because I just don't like doing that, but still, something told me to just call, so I did. I had just enough cash to buy a bus ticket to where my friend was, which was about 3 hours away. I think I don't recall all the details because I definitely disassociated a bit from the trauma. But I made it to her late into the night. I barely slept, showered early in the morning, called my family in the US to help me sort out my funds, thanked everyone, and was on my way. What a story. Ever since then, I wanted to return to London for a proper experience. This time, the vibes took a complete 180, and I'm so glad. On my first day, I went to go check out the Caribbean Carnival. I don't know how big I thought the Caribbean and African population in London was, but it's definitely way bigger. I had the perfect view of all the festivities. I was on a stoop where a bunch of other people were hanging out right where the trucks were turning to start the second stretch of the parade, the one that went till practically sundown. I made some new friends and ran into some familiar faces. One of the most prominent feelings I was experiencing that day was this unexpected but strong sense of community and belonging, even as a tourist. I was surrounded by my people, my culture, my food, my music. Such a stark difference from how my first trip in London began, stranded, lost, and disconnected, to now feeling at home. The next day continued on a high. From some online research about things to do, I found out about the cute and picturesque town of Canterbury. I always have a story, so I have to tell you guys because jet lag was kicking my butt and I hadn't slept well. I ended up getting to Canterbury late into the afternoon just as the historic boat rides were about to close. They weren't taking any more customers, but one of the employees still agreed to take me on a ride. Won't God do it? This was one of the cutest things I have ever done, y'all. Walking through Canterbury was just as charming as the boat ride. The ancient architecture, the old town feel, the cobblestone streets, the quiet corners, the slow living vibe. It all felt like I had stepped back in time. There were small alleys with shops and cozy little restaurants. Very random, but I had some of the best pho of my entire life at one of the restaurants. Imagine living in the US and telling someone the best pho you've ever had was at this tucked away restaurant in Canterbury, a small town 2 hours east of London, a place they've probably never even heard of. Unique stories like these are my favorite. There was a time when I would hesitate to share them because I worried about people looking at me like, what are you even talking about? Or as if I was trying to boast instead of just sharing something exciting that happened. I grew out of that though. I've realized those reactions had more to do with the listener than the storyteller. Also, having stories like that to share are just a byproduct of being a traveler and an adventurer, a blessing and something I'm proud of. They remind me of the vastness of God's creation, the beauty woven into every corner of the world, and the fact that I'm living out the desires of my heart to see and experience that beautiful world while collecting memories. Canterbury has a little piece of my heart. Day three, I was falling in love with London. The urban planning girly in me in new places is always trying to soak up my surroundings, observing how people live, trying to wrap my head around the city's layout, analyzing how people move around. Having the hyper consciousness of the things that make cities livable, accessible, and overall comfortable helps me focus on things I need even as a tourist so that I feel at ease. I'm always fascinated by the transportation systems in new cities. London's is easily in my top three. I love the double decker buses. Hello, efficiency. The bus stops actually have covering. Even when there are no seats, there's at least somewhere to comfortably lean. Still a bit of hostile architecture, but combined with the fact that the buses ran on schedule, it felt like the Department of Transportation was at least meeting the bare minimum to make taking the bus a not so heinous experience. The tube really scratched an itch in my brain. Clean, well lit, on time. The seats on the train fold to make extra space, which I can see being convenient for creating more standing space during rush hour or creating more space for someone in a wheelchair, for example. This wasn't on every train, but on some of them, I could move between cars safely. Greenery inside the stations, digital walls at the edge of the platforms serving as a safety barrier and showing the news and weather info and schedule, etc. In case you can't tell how much I love the tube, my souvenir from London is a shopping bag with a map of the tube on it. The city was decorated in flowers. Beyond the obvious beautification, it also made the city feel inviting. It felt very intentional, like a personal touch. Like somebody at the Department of Urban Forestry, if that's what it's called, said, "We must have flowers everywhere," and it was so. In some areas, even the bike lane markers were flowers. And on that note, I had to go visit the Rose Garden. It was a gloomy day, no surprise there, but I had a warm drink in hand, a massive park to walk through, and all of the time I wanted. And it wasn't just flowers, there was a little bit of wildlife and little water features, ponds, and fountains scattered throughout. I love that even in the city, there's still opportunity to slow down and enjoy something peaceful and calming like this. I'm currently on a journey to elevate my style. One thing I'm focusing on is being slow and intentional when it comes to adding anything new to my closet. The benefit of having that habit, I'm realizing on trips, is that not looking for things I could buy constantly is encouraging me to focus more on being present and soaking up the experience. I didn't shop much in London, but I visited stores I felt like were architecturally interesting. I also visited a few markets. They're really cool and kind of a thing here. Camden Market is a massive above ground market that transitions into underground in some parts. Although the diversity of shops was astounding, I was more fascinated by how it all came together structurally. It was a combination of old buildings with upgraded elements, new bridges, and old bridges connecting different parts of the market. I can see someone who's into preservation really loving this space. I enjoyed just walking through. Brick Lane Vintage Market was an underground treasure trove of thrift finds. I mean, are you really a thrift lover if you don't check out the vintage scene when you're in another city? And then there was Borough Market, partially above ground and underground, but it was all food. I imagine there's a place like this in heaven for foodies, but even bigger. If you want it fresh, freshly squeezed, fresh out the pan, freshly baked, you get the point, but Borough Market has it for you. I tried a lot of samples and ate even more. London was really showing me a good time, and I was all in. I got to go on a cable car ride and saw the view of the city from up high one night. I don't know what being on the London Eye feels like, but that cable car ride does a fine job of impressing a girl. Because I've spent an extended amount of time in Europe before, I felt tapped out when it came to visiting national museums and cathedrals. There are only so many times that I'm going to get excited about seeing neoclassical pieces in the same painting style or another Gothic structure. But I did do some sightseeing and saw Big Ben and the Tower Bridge. Tower Bridge was just cute. At the British Museum, they let people actually touch parts of the Parthenon. Gasp. I had to study that structure up and down in architecture school. My art history professor would lose his mind at this news. The other thing I appreciated was being able to see architectural works from places in biblical stories like ancient Assyria. I'm glad I gave at least one museum a chance. Bookstores are notable places to visit in London for their architectural beauty. Dance is a reader's dream. Somebody in the boardroom is doing what they need to do because the diversity of books in there is impressive. There's an entire wall of Caribbean authors and a whole shelf of works by Haitian authors. Some I knew and others I was introduced to. The British Library felt like something out of a Disney movie. I had to just linger in there and stare. One of my favorite things to do when traveling is walking around, discovering new things, and deciding, I want that in my house. I want that library in my house. The V&A storehouse blew me away. Yes, the pieces in there are interesting, but the interior is one of the most beautiful things I've ever seen, from a conceptual, design, and engineering perspective. I wish there was a sit down with the design team as part of the visit so I could pick their brains about how they achieve this level of magnificence. Because what do you mean I could look at all of the art in here at once, including what's below me? The people working behind the scenes in museums are rarely talked about, but at the V&A, they allow visitors to see them in their zone doing the work. You can see the studio spaces from above in parts of the museum. It's like the designers decided, well, if the idea is to bring people behind the scenes, let's just go all the way. And it fits so perfectly with the concept of the museum itself. Absolutely genius. I might not have shopped a lot in London, but your girl ate. Have you ever been so happy after a meal you walked away thinking about the people you want to bring to that restaurant and order the same menu items so they have the same experience? That was me walking away from Murray Deli. If anyone watching this ever ends up there, you have to try this combo. I'm also documenting this so that I remember what I got when I go back someday. I started with the organic lemonade and then I had the seafood pasta. Everything in that pasta tasted so fresh. And then I had the blueberry cheesecake and finished with the passion fruit tea. The combo was such a satisfying meal. Among the photos from this trip I think I want to print is this one from the car setup outside of Mari Deli. Speaking of, I think Bywater Street was the second cutest photo op I had on this trip. Among unexpected things that happened was walking the crosswalk of the iconic Beatles cover photo and seeing Sully's hideout. Just kidding. It was only right that I spent my last day at another market. On the morning of checkout day, I went to the Columbia Road Flower Market to get some flowers for the women who helped me during my time in London. On my first day at the hotel, even though check in wasn't for another 4 hours, one of the women, I think she might have been the manager, saw how tired I was and called upstairs to ask the cleaning team to prepare my room before moving on to others so that I could go rest. Another day, I needed to print something, so I emailed it to the girl at the front desk, and she not only printed it but organized the pages in a folder so they wouldn't get wrinkled, she said. I thought the gesture was so nice. Another one I noticed after a few days would always come by my table in the breakfast room to ask me how I was doing. She wasn't doing that with everybody else, so I genuinely felt like she was trying to talk to me. These same women complimented my outfits every day before I left the hotel. Solo traveling, you really come to appreciate gestures that make you feel seen and welcome by people you cross paths with. I have so many amazing memories of London now. I feel like something in me has healed. On top of that, I'm realizing this is my first solo trip in years. It felt like God's grace was on this one. Should I move to London? I'm just kidding. See y'all soon.